Data center solutions are probably overhyped at this point. I think it's a tourist level sort of cash grab.
I personally think that nuclear is overhyped. There's just something really sexy about it. But hype? Yes. There's a lot of hype. There's too much hype.
We actually have all the tools right now to decarbonize. We could decarbonize our planet in the next 10 years if we just pivoted and focused on that.
We're here at Pacific Northwest Climate Week. We are on a rooftop in downtown Seattle. I'm Laura Scott. I'm an audio producer and journalist.
And I am Lisa Stifler, a GeekWire reporter. And this is Positive Charge,
Sponsored by Amazon Sustainability.
The sun was shining, slushy, boozy cocktails were flowing, and there were some big names in attendance. So we set up in a little corner with our podcast mics and started scanning the crowd. We grabbed 8 investors, founders, people who are advocates of this space, and convinced them to put down their drinks for a minute, stop their conversations, and share with us what they are excited about, what's overhyped, where they think the planet is headed. But before we get to all of that, we want to sit for a minute in a happy space.
Yes, because people at this happy hour were happy. You don't always hear a lot of climate optimism on the news, so it was so exciting to enter a space, go on this rooftop, where really smart people are putting actual major financial investment into tech that they don't just think will help with climate change or help save the world. They're really betting on it as the future of how we live and how we work as a society.
Here's Mike Dietrich, an author and sustainability executive for Decarb Advisory.
I look at it as an opportunity, right? So we have problems to solve. That's what we're really good at doing as a species. That's how we got here, by solving problem after problem after problem. We actually have all the tools right now to decarbonize. We could decarbonize our planet in the next 10 years if we just pivoted and focused on that. Agricultural soils can absorb so much carbon. It's like almost 40% of our emissions. Our buildings can become way more efficient. Our infrastructure, we're constantly proving on this. I'm really optimistic because I'm literally working at the intersection of what's working and scaling it. And there's so much that's working, and we just need to focus on how to scale that.
This is Jonathan Azoff, co-founder of the venture capital firm Snowcap.
So what kind of brings me a lot of confidence and joy and excitement about the future is this idea that science has been the only thing in my life that has changed behavior. Like when something is so fundamentally different, like a rocket that can land itself, all of a sudden the economics of rockets changed overnight, and now a space industry exists, right? I think those sorts of things give me a lot of hope that all the negative charts and things that maybe we fearmonger around, especially in the climate alarmist community, I think are at risk to being upended by innovation. Innovation can make those charts look very different.
And here's Karen Kidder. She's executive director of E8, a Seattle area angel investing organization.
What gives me hope is what we're seeing from an individual level. I've been heartened with the fact that our community is growing, and that the fact that we've got more and more people that want to either contribute in some capacity, whether it's investment or their expertise. So I'm super hopeful that while maybe federal funding's been pulled back, or some of the political things that are happening in the world are making it more challenging for climate companies, that on an individual level, people are stepping up. And so we're seeing great growth there.
So beyond all that optimism, these are really shrewd innovators and investors who have really good insights into where the climate industry is heading. So we took all of our conversations with these folks and we distilled that down to 4 big picture ideas, themes that really emerged from our conversations that evening.
Our first theme, there's a gold rush, which is very Northwest coded.
Indeed, a gold rush is very exciting, and just like yesteryear, Seattle was a big jumping off point for that phenomenon. And what it really means is that there is a lot of hype and frenzy right now in this space.
Maybe too much? That's what Jonathan Azoff thinks at Snowcap.
I mean, data center solutions are probably overhyped at this point. There's a million of them, and they're all trying to cash grab the big AI race. So I would say that's probably overhyped right now. I'm seeing it more on my side of the spectrum with like deep tech and hard tech. But I mean, even on the software side, everyone and their mother who's worked in software and is coming out of big corporates or even startup land, they're seeing the tremendous valuations entering into the public market, and they're seeing that as basically their future customer. what they don't realize is everyone else is seeing the same news article. So, yeah, there's not enough time being spent on differentiation and even really conviction, honestly. I think it's once again, I think it's a tourist level sort of cash grab.
And Eugene Chow, an investment partner at Clean Energy Ventures, agrees.
So I think overhyped, not in terms of necessarily the importance that it plays within the energy system, but maybe overhyped in terms of valuation, is a lot of grid technologies, and especially if you're working with AI data centers, expanding capacity to the grid, those valuations are pretty crazy. But in, I think, a positive way, because I think people see potential there. They're solving big problems for hyperscalers, and it's worth a lot of money to them. So there are definitely investment opportunities there, but overhyped in high valuations for sure.
So clearly there's a ton of need for innovation with data centers. I mean, these tech giants are investing hundreds of billions of dollars annually into this space. And they need low carbon solutions for these buildings. They need clean energy. They need to connect to the grid. So we absolutely do need investments there. But the worries that these folks are sharing is that some of these ventures will not deliver, and it's taking resources away from other really critical areas. Karen Kidder of E8, she has those concerns. And in particular, she wants to see more dollars going to building out the resilience so people are ready to deal with the impacts of climate change. So that's stuff like, the droughts that are going to toast some crops. What do you think about when you think of that space?
Well, I think about rising temperatures. I also think about houses falling into the ocean on our coastlines.
Those images are terrifying.
Yeah.
So here's Karen Kidder.
Data centers are overhyped. There we go. There's a lot of stuff going on about data centers right now, but I think there's a lot of interesting developments going on in the material space too. We're also very much focused right now on climate resilience. We have a fund that's focused exclusively on that right now, specifically grid, water, and food security. And so we've seen a lot in that sector right now. So I don't know if it's overhyped but it's critical. It's super critical for where we're at today.
And another topic that we can lump into the data center overhype is nuclear energy. We did a whole episode about this. There's proven fission, those classic reactors, and there's also fusion, the yet unsolved energy reaction that powers our sun.
Star in a jar.
Nuclear energy is what a lot of people are counting on to power future data centers.
Okay, I'm probably gonna piss a lot of people off with this, but I personally think that nuclear is overhyped.
That's Susan Su, founder of Climate Money and partner at Toba Capital.
There are so many nuclear startups out there. And by the way, by overhyped, I don't mean that these startups aren't good, their technology's not good, they're not doing great work, they're not working hard. They're all of those things and more. But hype, yes. There's a lot of hype. There's too much hype, I think, in nuclear for what you think about the actual timeline and cost to build out. I see so many, whether it's off-takers on the demand side or investors, that think that nuclear is just going to be the end-all be-all to power demand. And in reality, it's really expensive for many good reasons. And it's very expensive from a time perspective. Taking the most time, costing the most money. And I don't know, there's just something really sexy about it. And I don't want to, I'm probably going to make so many enemies here in Seattle because we have like helium. I mean, we have nuclear. We're like a home of nuclear here, which is something to be really proud of. But I think that it should be tempered because there's other stuff happening that's really meaningful as well.
The fact that there even is a gold rush is proof of something that a lot of people might not believe. That bleeding hearts does not necessarily mean bleeding wallets.
Yeah, that brings us to our next big theme. You can make some serious green going green. I know, sorry.
So one of the big shifts that people we spoke to at the happy hour were really talking about is how clean tech is actually starting to pencil out. It's not just about doing the right thing for the planet.
And that would be great if it was all altruistic.
Yeah, it would, although you'd run out of money at some point. So the good news is that you can actually make money doing it. So they're really getting excited about technologies that perform better, they're cheaper, and they're filling real needs.
Eugene Chow from Clean Energy Ventures definitely had a lot to say about that.
I think a lot of the dialogue and conversations around climate have gone in the wrong direction, especially over the last couple of years. And a lot of attention has moved away from climate. People aren't talking about climate anymore. And so I think that's concerning, especially as we see corporates and companies, governments, and even individuals shift their attention and focus away from climate. The positive, very happily on the other side, is that climate companies are now being more economical, more affordable, and deploying them is the better option, both in terms of lower cost, but also more resilient supply chains. And so people are choosing climate solutions and climate products, not because of the climate value, but because they offer other value propositions too. You don't need to talk about climate to want to invest in and work with and buy a climate company.
And one area they really called out was electrified transportation.
So EVs, right?
Yeah, but not just EVs, not just people driving around, not just in the US. And that was what was so interesting, is that they really zeroed in on the fact that these technologies are rolling out globally, and that gives them an economic boost everywhere.
Here's Duncan Logan. He's the co-founder and CEO of 9-0, which is a climate innovation hub based out of Seattle and San Francisco, both cities where you cannot drive 2 minutes without seeing a Tesla.
Despite our political leaders' best efforts, green transport is here. That horse has left the stable, and we just need to rebrand and get it as a cheaper, better, faster way to move around rather than a green way. If you just look at the economics of electrical transport, and this is, you look in China, they already have electric semis going everywhere, electric buses going everywhere, electric scooters, cars. Their ability to move people or goods is going to be a fraction of ours in a decade.
A fraction of the cost, that is.
We are falling so far behind. So it's a competitive thing.
If it's cheaper to move a person or a package in Shanghai than in Seattle, this stops being an environmental argument and becomes an economic one.
And back to Susan Su, a partner at Toba Capital.
We in the US can tend to be very US-centric when we think about technology adoption, and we forget that there's a rest of the world that's experiencing technology adoption and demand curves in very different ways than we are, because they have different external forcing factors. And if you look at the EV revolution that's happening, I'm not just talking about China or Europe, but like particularly in so-called emerging markets that people tend to discount. For example, East Africa and India. These markets are massive. People are really young. They want to get around. And most importantly, they're using vehicles for commercial purposes. And what do commercial drivers want? They want to take home more money. And the best way for them to take home more money is not to burn it all at the petrol station.
And that brings us to our third act, to steal a line from This American Life.
That's fair. You can do that.
Our third theme was, don't underestimate the workhorses, the tried and true climate tech that's been around for decades.
Yeah, that's totally right. While folks were just reminding us not to overlook EVs, there are other sustainable technologies that maybe have lost some of that sexy new shine, but they are still innovating in these spaces, and they should absolutely not be dismissed.
Not if you want to make money. Susan Su points to solar undergoing a massive technological leap.
I think solar is really underhyped. And the reason why is because you couldn't be less hyped than solar. So literally it is at the nadir, and it has been for maybe 10 years, and it's like kind of not changing, like it's in the trough. But I think people really need to update their knowledge on what's happening in solar, which is Chinese solar, cheap Chinese solar is not that cheap anymore. We need to build an onshore supply chain, and I think that's creating a lot of momentum for solar companies. If you look at First Solar and you dig into their earnings, I won't say the exact number because people can find this themselves online, and I almost don't want to too many people on the trail. But their gross margins are totally different now than they were several years ago, the last time you paid attention to that company. And so that might be something to think about as we look at what's happening down the innovation pipeline in solar, because there's so much innovation happening. It is not a done deal. We're not done at silicon. Solar is actually going through a huge technological transition right now from silicon-based solar as the de facto global standard to silicon perovskite tandems, and that completely levels and reopens the playing field for new players to come in.
We're going to take a short break, but when we come back,
Food. We're going to get a snack. And then we're going to come back to more green technologies that are starting to make some serious money.
Okay, we're back at Pacific Northwest Climate Week, continuing with theme number 3, the workhorse green tech that you've definitely heard of, but maybe haven't thought about in a while. And it's been quietly advancing in some really cool ways. That includes innovation in food and agriculture. Let's go back to Duncan Logan from Climate Innovation Hub 90.
I think people who have demonstrable products and services that can actually make a difference. So, food and ag, there's a ton of startups there who demonstrably can show what they're doing is both good for the environment and good for human progress. Those people aren't big bets. They just need scaling capital. The greenhouse or the vertical farming component is absolutely, it's there, it's tried and tested. It just needs more growth capital to get it in there. Like so many climate problems, it's a big capital intensive issue to get around. The in the field robotic stuff is super impressive.
Yeah, and some of that's even happening in the Pacific Northwest. There are companies that are building robots that go out into the field and they will zap weeds. They will pick up rocks and move them out of the way. I know. It's super cool. And then, in kind of the more indoor farming environment, there are companies that are building little greenhouses that could get tucked into cities and grow food locally and efficiently without worrying about the heat and the drought caused by climate change.
Artificial intelligence can help us build greener buildings too, according to author Mike Dietrich.
Let's go with existing technology and technologies that are developing. I am all here for future state, but we have this now. Let's do what's working now and scale it. Currently, the way that we build buildings, it's design build. An architect and an engineer, they ping pong back and forth. An AI program could model all of that to 80%, and then the architects and the engineers come back. Right now, we can build zero carbon buildings at the same price point as code built buildings. So this would allow us to do that faster and probably even cheaper.
And so these old school ideas are super cool, but you might be excited to know that there are still folks out there who are taking really big swings at cutting edge tech, stuff you've never thought about yet that could be game-changing technologies. And that includes Jonathan Azoff of Snowcap. He's taking a bet on a company called Lazera, which describes itself as a nuclear startup. It's something I've never heard of, and I don't exactly know how this would work.
We invested in a nuclear company. They're a company called Lazera, by the way. The reason I think this is an interesting story is here in the U.S., we have a storied history of fraud in nuclear, specifically around cold fusion. And so it took me 4 months to get even interested in investing in this company because I was so petrified by what it could look like to invest in a company that had a different pathway than we've come to accept and throw billions of dollars at. But what I found is that if they're right, and we're doing a lot of work here to prove to the rest of the world that this is not cold fusion 2.0, if they're actually right, I honestly believe this will be the sort of company that I can not only be excited about investing in, but I can look back at and say this was my mark on clean energy.
And our fourth and final theme, the grid might sound boring. I mean, it's been around for ages, but it's kind of the link that powers everything.
That's it. Everything, all of these problems run into the exact same brick wall, the physical electrical grid. Ben Idelson, who is the founder of Step Change Ventures, and he also does a podcast about this issue, argues that solving grid bottlenecks is the single greatest investment opportunity of our generation.
We've had 20 years of flat electricity demand growth in this country. We're now in this moment that is relatively unprecedented for people who have worked in this industry, which is we need to triple our grid by 2050. And for the first time, we now have people with large bags of money showing up to get the power now. And so anything that channels that capital into upgrading our grid and upgrading and powering kind of the transition we've all been wanting is the magic moment. I just still think it's insane that we have not actually figured out bidirectional charging. Bidirectional charging is the idea that you can charge your car battery from an outlet in your wall, but it turns out your car battery can also power your house or a building or the grid. And the amount of battery capacity that we now have in this country on wheels and that we're not pulling anything out of it.
So fixing the grid doesn't have to be about rebuilding all of that infrastructure. It can come down to these creative workarounds like adding batteries to the grid or finding unused power right under our noses. Here's Darian Parrish of Power On. It's a new startup and all they do is energy storage.
Batteries?
Yes, I love batteries.
My area of focus is batteries, and I did solid-state battery research almost 15 years ago, and it was also really just around the corner. So I think underhyped for me is batteries and energy storage. Actually, at the panel down here at Silicon Valley Bank, they were talking about how batteries are at the trough of disillusionment, or at the low point. And I think some of it is legitimate safety concerns, and some of it is just media. And it's hard to say, do you want a bunch of fire risk from fossil fuels and the inhalation of all those chemicals and exhaust, or do you want a lesser risk that might be hyperbolic in the media at the moment, but actually net safer?
And Karen Kidder from E8 is also hot on this trail.
One of the companies that we just invested in is called It's Electric, and I wish we had invested them even earlier. They're actually doing EV charging, but through buildings, like existing buildings, as opposed to having to wait for grid capacity. So like in cities, in urban environments. So a building might have supplemental energy that they could just plug right into, basically. So they're bringing it to the curbside, but connecting to existing infrastructure that's there.
All right, lucky listeners. So we actually do have one more bonus theme that encapsulates all of the conversations that we had.
Tech won't save us. But don't freak out. Humans could.
Because while you can have all of these amazing technology solutions, the best software, the best hardware, without some storytelling, without people coming together to support innovation and the right policies, great technologies will just flame out.
Here are Jonathan Azoff and Susan Su.
I think some of the biggest firms in the world dedicate a tremendous amount of their management capital towards their own marketing and media and storytelling, and that's not an accident. The best storytellers will win often over the best technologies. Those people are going to win in an outsized way. And as an engineer, I never thought those words would be coming out of my mouth, but I've seen it firsthand now. I've seen tremendous world-changing technologies die on the vine right next to a company that has no justification to exist outside of its founders' brilliant ability to tell a story.
Yeah, I think what makes me hopeful is that there's so many really great technologies, and most of all, those technologies are winning on fundamentals of cost and just being better products, better experiences. I think that makes me really excited that we are going through a very inevitable technology transition. No society ever in human history has ever said, well, we're going to hang on to an old technology just because of politics and succeeded. It is inevitable, and that's really, really hopeful. On the more pessimistic side, technology alone will not and was never going to save us. Only we can do that. And we have to do that through policy, through collective action, through awareness, and through behavior change. And those things are really hard. In many ways, they're much harder to crack than nuclear fusion.
I hope we can do it. I honestly, after these conversations, I think we can do it. There's a lot of money to be made here, and unfortunately, money is a really big motivating factor for any kind of broad societal shift.
Yep. And, like the folks mentioned, we need to have policies that support this. We need to have a lot of collective action. We need more people involved in investing in these really important spaces. And again, there's an argument to be made that this isn't just charitable investing, that you can actually have some meaningful returns from it. And another point that I really appreciate that folks shared was that these technology breakthroughs can happen at unexpected times and places that suddenly unlock new solutions that can really move us ahead more quickly than you might have anticipated if you'd always expected these little tiny steps of progress. Like, we can make big leaps that could maybe save us. I don't know. We can hope for that.
We can hope for that. Yeah.
It's possible. And the other thing I love about an event like this is that you remember how many people care and how many super smart people care and are working really hard to address these challenges.
Yeah. Well, speaking of really cool technology that would be really smart to invest in right now, maybe even yesterday, our next episode is all about batteries and energy storage.
Specifically, the reuse and repurposing of electric vehicle batteries, because as we noted, a lot of people are actually driving EVs and adoption is happening. And then there's going to be a giant surplus of these used batteries that are far from dead, but aren't practical for driving cars anymore, that could be plugged into the grid if you're smart about it. And so we spoke to two of the global leaders in this space of repurposing these batteries. And we even visited one. We went international for you to learn more about how companies are innovating in this space.
So if you want to hear that episode, hit subscribe, hit follow. And thank you for listening to Positive Charge by GeekWire, sponsored by Amazon Sustainability.